Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutanamādharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutanamādharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari
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 Jai Gopi Chandravabha Jai Girivaradhari Jai Gopi
Jannavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari
Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari Jai Radha
Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari
Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana
Yashoda
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana. Everyone together. Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
Om Hri Om. Very good. Welcome everyone. Namaste. It is wonderful to see everyone here. We have almost a full house. A few people couldn't make it today, but it is absolutely wonderful being here. Let me tell people, of course, as people probably noticed, I was not able to do the live stream last week. It's because I was traveling. And as far as where I was traveling, it was all dharmic work, to put it very lightly. I gave a talk before a truly wonderful audience of wonderful people in Arkansas, but then ended up touring much of the South, interestingly, and the Midwest, some states I had never been to before. In addition to Arkansas, I visited Tennessee, I visited Kentucky, I was in Illinois for about 5 minutes as we drove through, Missouri, and then back here to the Vedic heartland, which is in Omaha, Nebraska. And this took about 8 days, something like that. So a lot of traveling, but indeed some extremely, extremely good things were accomplished as a result of my doing this trip. But I am back now in the Vedic heartland. And indeed, we're going to be continuing with what we have been doing for 10 sessions now. Now this is the 11th session. And as people know, what we tend to do with these live streams is we tend to go through the Vedic scriptures, almost always. Sometimes we'll do a standalone lecture, a standalone talk, or we'll do something more experiential, meditational. But more than anything, what we like to do is to go through the Vedic scriptures, what I call Vedic exegetical analysis, looking at the scriptures, commenting on them. And what we have been doing for, again, this is the 11th session now, is we have been going through very specifically a very important Vedic scripture, a portion of a Vedic scripture known as Purusha Sukta. And this is in the 10th mandala, or the 10th book, 90th chapter of Rig Veda, which is the oldest layer of Sanskrit literature in existence. Well, this portion of the Rig Veda, again, is called Purusha Sukta, and it is considered by most to be the most philosophical portion. And it's not very long. It's only 24 verses. And again, we have been going through this for week after week after week, sometimes focusing on one verse for an hour. Well, we're getting toward the end now at this point. And I believe, and don't quote me on this, as I like to say, I believe we can probably finish up our series in 2 more sessions, today and next week, because there are literally about 3 or 4 verses left, something like that. The last verse is the most important. So we are going to do that as a standalone talk. But all that being said, let us go now to these very wonderful verses. And just to remind people, in these brief 24 verses, we have traversed the universe and back, quite literally. We have traversed all of time, going back billions of years to the very beginning of our universe. That is why this little section known as Purusha Sukta is of such importance. It contains within it so much. There is cosmogony, i.e., how is it that not just our Brahmanda or material universe is created, but how all universes are created. It speaks about that. It speaks about not just cosmogony, but cosmology. That is how it is that the universe is structured. It talks about various strata of the gods and goddesses. It talks deeply about philosophy, including divine ontology, i.e., quite literally, what is the essential nature of the absolute. It talks about how it is that we can come to know that absolute, and on and on and on. So there is a lot that's in these mere 24 verses. That's why this is of such importance. There is almost nothing of greater philosophical importance that is not touched upon in this very short little hymn called Purusha Sukta. And what we're going to be covering today, among other things, is actual Vedanta. Actual Vedanta, that is the highest of all philosophies. But let's go through these verses now. Now we're going to look at verse 21 of the Purusha Sukta. And it proceeds in this way. The Supreme Progenitor, that is the original Prajapati, that is the creator of even Brahma himself, moves inside the cosmic womb. Though unborn, he, quote-unquote, takes birth in a variety of ways. The wise ones, that is the dhira, that's the word that's used in the Sanskrit. The wise ones, dhira, that is self-possessed and stoic, know his real nature as the origin of the universe. The secondary creators, who are wise, desire to attain the positions of Marichi and other great sages. And this is where this verse ends. So again, this is verse 21. And there is a lot that is here, but we'll try to get through this somewhat quickly, because while there is a lot, we've covered much of this previously. So first of all, interesting how in the Sanskrita, when you look at it, what is being spoken of is quite specifically God, the supreme being, the absolute, to state it philosophically. And yet he is described in this verse, unlike the previous verses, as the Supreme Progenitor. Now, we've encountered this term before looking at the rest of the Purusha Sukta that we looked at previously, progenitor, progenitor. What is a progenitor? Well, again, this entire Purusha Sukta deals especially with cosmogony, that is how the universe is created and the initial stages of that creation. And we understand that there is one being who is here first. This being is known as Brahma. And then on top of that, he being a progenitor, he produces several other beings, and they also are secondary progenitors who then create all the building blocks for our universe. But interestingly, here we are speaking of the Supreme Progenitor, i.e., that being who precedes even Brahma, the creator of this universe, otherwise known, in Western philosophical parlance as the demiurge. So what we're talking about here is God. So we have to make this very clear. So now let's go through this. The Supreme Progenitor, and that is God, the original Prajapati, who is the creator even of Brahma, moves inside the cosmic womb. Now, what is meant by this? Again, for those who are new to these concepts, when you have a chance, look at the previous 10 videos of this series, and all of this will be explained in excruciating detail. when it comes to creating a universe, there are two factors that come into play, very generally speaking. There is what is called Prakriti, that is materiality itself, everything that is material, that is everything that is perceptual and conceptual. That is what is meant by the cosmic womb. So materiality, Prakriti. The other thing is consciousness. This is the other factor, what is called Purusha, consciousness. When these two come together, then you have a proper universe. Because if you have one, only the other, you don't have a proper universe. If you have only materiality, there's nothing there to experience the materiality. Literally, if you have a universe of rocks, let's say, a universe of insentient matter, then it doesn't matter. Why? Because there's no experiencer. All that there is thing that you can maybe hear about from your safe vantage point outside of that, but you cannot experience within it. And then on the other hand, if there were only consciousness without materiality, what would we have? The pure spiritual realm, but without the material realm being involved in any way. So thus, any given universe is a combination of materiality and consciousness, spirit. This is true when it comes to the macrocosm, so the universe itself. This is also true when it comes to the microcosm, when it comes to the person. Because look around you, all the humans who we're seeing here, what are we in our present form? That is, as human persons, to state it technically. What are we? We are consciousness within matter. So we are a replication microcosmically of what's being spoken of here. And that is God himself entering into materiality, Purusha entering into Prakriti. So that's what's being described here, very, very, very simply. I say, tongue-in-cheek, very simply. Again, if you watch the previous videos, then it does become a little bit more simple. Now let's go on. It's still speaking about the absolute here, about God. Though unborn, he, quote, takes birth in a variety of ways. Oh, now this is very interesting. So again, we're still speaking about something very specific. We're speaking about not just how any of us interacts with materiality, but God, how God himself penetrates all materiality with his spirit. So thus, as I've said many times, as has been written in our books, we have a panentheistic theology. Panentheistic. In other words, we understand that in his essential nature, God necessarily is fully transcendent, i.e. of the nature of consciousness. On the other hand, God also interpenetrates all reality. So therefore, there is nothing we can point to that has existence to it. There's nothing we can point to that is either perceptual or conceptual where God is not present. God is present everywhere. And it's for this reason that the Vedic perspective of, for example, nature, the material world, etc., is a positive one. You know, we know that there are some religions, specifically the Abrahamic religions, in which matter, nature, etc., is looked upon very suspiciously. That, oh, it's anti-God, it's anti-spiritual, etc. Not for us. For us, we understand that when we go into nature, when we see the most beautiful forest, the most beautiful groves, when we see any aspect of nature, what we're seeing is God penetrating and giving and sustaining all of nature, all of materiality. So that is what's being spoken of here. And it says, though unborn, he, quote unquote, takes birth in a variety of ways. What is meant by this? There are actually quite a few things that are meant by this. Of course, as we know, it is the nature of God that God does not take birth. He doesn't have to. Again, he fully transcends all material reality. He transcends the temporal, he transcends the causal, he transcends the spatial, etc. And yet it says that although unborn, and again, it makes it clear, though God really is never born, at the same time, he, quote unquote, takes birth in a variety of ways. What does this mean? Well, several things. You remember I said a moment ago, God is everywhere. There is no atom that has existence without the presence of God within it. If anything has existence, it is because God is within it. If there is anything that God is not within, then it is nothing. It does not exist. This is also the case for ourselves as well. God is present within us, within our heart, as the sharira shariran, as that being who is the soul of our soul. God is present within us. And as we ourselves take birth and pass away, and take birth and pass away, in a way, one could say that God is there also with us, experiencing that through us. Even though God is not, quote unquote, taking birth for the same reason we are. We're going through reincarnation. Why? Ignorance, illusion. Whereas God, on the other hand, accompanies us as we go through reincarnation to reincarnation to reincarnation. But he does so as the eternal inner witness who is there with us at all times as our friend. That's the nature of God. So in this way, you could say God, quote unquote, takes birth. He doesn't. He simply follows us. Always. He is with us at all times as we take birth. More, and I said there are many ways in which we can understand this one little sentence. How else does he take birth? Here, let me pause for a second. I have the most intelligent students on the face of the earth, both here and people watching live right now throughout the world. In what other way does God take birth?
Avatar.
Very good, yes. He takes birth, quote unquote, as the avatar. In other words, at times of great distress upon the earth, God himself will descend upon the earth. So again, a lot to say just about this one little sentence, but I want to try to cover several verses today, so let's go on a little bit. Very good. The wise ones. And the word that's used in the Sanskrit is one of my favorite words, dhira. Dhira. It means an individual who has gravity. Something that we rarely meet today. You know, in the past, you met individuals, whether they were warriors, whether they were priests, whether they were spiritual people. You met people who had gravity. In other words, there were some people who you met them, and rather than experiencing someone who was flighty, who was very light like a feather, and they could just be kind of carried away by whatever wind happens to come their way. On the contrary, you used to be able to meet people who, when you met them, you felt as if you were in the presence of a living mountain. They had solidity to them. They were solid in a good way. They had gravitas. They were individuals who you knew that they were serious. Not meaning they didn't laugh, not meaning they didn't smile, no. You knew that when you spoke to this person, you were not speaking to someone flighty. You were speaking to someone who you could put your faith in this person. And not only in speaking with them, you knew that if there was some situation, any sort of situation in which, oh, you needed help, that's the person you go to, because you know that that is the person who's going to help you. So this is what's meant by this Sanskrit word, dhira, dhira, meaning someone who, again, has gravity, who is self-possessed, who is stoic. So that's the word that's used. The translation is the wise ones. So such individuals know his real nature as the origin of the universe. So very nice sentence here. So those dhira, those wise individuals who, again, they have gravitas to them, they understand his real nature. Let's stop there. We won't even go through the whole sentence. What does this mean? In order to truly understand what is the nature of the Absolute, Atato Brahma Jignasa. This is the first aphorism of the Brahma Sutras, the Vedanta Sutras. Now then is the time to inquire into the nature of the Absolute. Are you a philosopher? Are you a philosophical person? Are you a spiritual seeker? Well, that's what you're seeking. You want to inquire into the nature of the Absolute. How do you do that? How do you do that? Well, there are the natural ways that one begins. You start by reading books. You start by, indeed, inquiring different places, trying to find people who seem wise, and you speak with them, etc. And that's all the natural thing to do. But then ultimately, what do? You indeed try to find such wise ones, such dhira, individuals who, when you meet them, you feel as if, again, you are in the presence of a living mountain. You find such individuals and you inquire specifically unto them. So now, with that understanding, let's look at this again. The wise ones know his real nature. So in other words, it's not merely that we are to approach such wise ones. We are to become such wise ones. We are to become individuals who ourselves, again, are serious. Who, in our pursuit of absolute truth, not just a truth, not just factual truth, not just, oh, what's the weather outside today, but for those individuals who are seeking that truth which is of the nature of the eternal. What is it that we do? Oh, we approach such wise individuals, but more, we endeavor in everything that we are to become such wise people. What does that mean? That means literally in every way. That means that we reform who we are. It means that we grow more than anything within. Really, we grow in every way. You know, I've said this before. There's nothing, quote unquote, otherworldly about Vedic religion. No, we believe in growing in every way. Oh, get an education. Oh, yes, have a nice career, etc. Grow externally, grow materially even, but especially we are to grow internally in our internal spiritual realization of who we are, who am I truly, but also what is the nature of that absolute. So this is what we are to do. And then once that is the case, then we know the origin, his real nature as the origin of the universe. So again, we're speaking about God. What is God? God is Janmayasya Yataha. Janmayasya Yataha. This is the second verse from the Brahma Sutras. The definition of God. What is God? God is that from which all things proceed. God is the origin of everything, beyond which there is nothing. So thus God is Karana Karanam. God is that cause which itself has no cause. There is nothing beyond. So indeed, once we become such individuals who have wisdom, we have the ability to know this. Now here it becomes interesting, but not really philosophically so. So we'll go through this last sentence pretty quickly. The secondary creators, that is the secondary Prajapatis, creators, who are wise, desire to attain the positions of Marichi and the other great sages. Now, I'll talk about this very quickly. Again, we're talking about various different personalities. So again, by the secondary creators is meant those individuals who they were so powerful that they were there at the very beginning of our universe and they helped to create it. So this is what's being spoken of. So you can imagine how powerful these beings are. And then there's the qualifier, who are wise. They're also wise. And yet it says, even of these people, so powerful that they can help in creating quite literally solar systems. This is what we're talking about. It says that such people desire to attain the positions of Marichi and other great sages. And without going too in depth in this, Marichi was indeed a very great sage, a great rishi. He was one of indeed the wise ones who was spoken about just one sentence before. So all that this last sentence is saying is, we're actually being told, become like these great sages, become like Marichi, become like the great sages and rishis, because even the great progenitors desire such a thing. And why? Because they're wise. So in other words, to state this more colloquially, but also in a way that we can fully understand, when we look throughout history, what do we see if we're looking for the right thing? We see great, great, great saints, sages, yogis, accomplished spiritual masters throughout history. If we wish to know the absolute, we are to become like unto them. We also are to become like this, like these individuals. So that's the idea. Very good. So now that verse is finished. Let's go on, and we'll try to finish 2 more verses if we can, because now it becomes especially overtly philosophical with these next 2 verses, where it is now speaking very Vedantically, what's called Vedantically, i.e. very philosophically. So the next verse is 22 of the Purusha Sukta, and it proceeds in this way. Obeisances to him, the self-luminous Brahman, who is the inner light even for the gods, who is the leader of the rituals, that is Purohit. Purohit is the Sanskrit, who is the leader of the rituals of the gods, and who was in existence even before the gods. So again, very, very interesting verse. And now this and the next verse are speaking, again, very specifically about Vedanta. And I'll explain as we go through these two verses what is meant by that. First of all, this verse begins in the proper way. What is the proper way? What is the proper way? How do we approach God? How do we approach that which is that than which nothing greater can be conceived, the origin of all things, the source of all reality? I've asked this question before. Indeed, there's a very old video, maybe 16 years old, or at least maybe more, short video where I talk about this. If, let's say, we were told, oh, there's a door right there, and when we go through that door, we're going to meet God. And no, not someone's claim that that's God, not someone who kind of seems godlike. No, it's guaranteed. You're going to meet God. You're going to meet that which is the source of every single atom in existence. All you have to do is walk through that door. Well, you walk through that door, and indeed it's God. What's the first thing you do? Now, my disciples know the answer. Let me give you some alternatives. First thing, do you start to ask God questions? Silly questions, philosophical questions? No. That would be silly. Do you, let's say, start to complain to God? Oh God, why is there so much suffering in the world? You know, I remember when I was 5 years old, I fell off a swing and I really hurt my knee badly. Can you tell me, why did that happen to me? Is that what you do when you meet God? No. And I can go on and on. Rather, if you walk through that door and you meet quite literally God, this is what you do. You make sure, number one, that you don't open your mouth. Number two, you get down on the floor at his feet. You offer what's called your obeisances at the feet of God. And then you very slowly get up, looking at the feet of God, and very slowly having your gaze come up, until finally you see the face of God. And you simply say, my Lord, I offer my obeisances unto you. Then everything else can come. Then you can ask all the questions you want. Truthfully, at that point, you wouldn't have to. But just saying if you wanted to, which again would be silly. So it's interesting how, again, not just this verse, but we've seen so many verses in the Vedic scriptures that start off in this proper way. First, obeisances to him is how this verse starts. And then it becomes very philosophical. So why? Why first obeisance? In other words, why first devotion? Why first reverence? And then philosophy, secondarily. Verus philosophus est amator Dei. Of all people, Augustine, St. Augustine in his City of God, has this very nice phrase. Who is the true philosopher? The lover of God. Understanding this, now we can proceed. So first, obeisances to him. Who? The self-luminous Brahman. So again, what is Brahman? Oh, we've spoken about this thousands of times. Brahman is the philosophical designator of God. It's like in English, you don't want to commit to what or who God is, so you say the absolute in a Hegelian sort of sense. The absolute. You see, that way you're non-committal, you're neutral. Oh, what are we inquiring into? The absolute, whatever that may be. We'll see what it is. But for now, it's the absolute. In Sanskrit, the word you use is Brahman. This is the most philosophical designation for God. Brahman. But more, not only are we speaking of Brahman, but it gives this qualifier. The self-luminous Brahman. Now, this is of significance, of great significance, actually. Because as we know, every being in creation, both sentient and insentient, can only be seen and can only see as a result of light. Light that is external to itself, the source of which is external. Is this not the case? Go outside right now, it's a beautiful day. Why do you know? The sun is out. You know, it's nighttime, you need to see something. What do you have? Oh, whatever, flashlights, candles, etc., etc. So we need some sort of light. Right now, people here in our live congregation can see this because they're here in our temple. But watching on this live stream on YouTube right now, you can't see there are lights on me. That's the only reason why you can see me. So beings, sentient or insentient, need external sources of light. God does not. God is the source of all light. God is the source of all reality, but it also means light. God is quite literally self-luminous. I'm not self-luminous. Nothing is. No one is. But God is. Why? Because ultimately God is that source of all light, meaning both in the literal sense, but the figurative sense. That is that source of light itself, but also all that which is designated by light, that which is good, that which is sattvic, that which is wholesome, that which is natural, that which is good in every way. That is God. Now, it goes on. It goes on to make this very clear. Who, and now speaking of God, who is the inner light for even the gods? So how amazing, you know. I've spoken about this also thousands of times over the last roughly 37 years that I've been teaching, something like that, that Sanatana Dharma is a polytheistic monotheism, just stated in this way. Do we believe in the existence of many, many, many gods and goddesses throughout the totality of our universe? Oh, yes. These are beneficent beings. There are various ontological strata of them, a hierarchy of ontological strata of various gods and goddesses. Some are more powerful than others, but they're all beneficent. They're all good beings. And these also are beings of light. These are beings who indeed are good in every way. And we accept all these beings, we propitiate them, we honor them, we worship them, etc., etc. But it's also understood that even all these beings, as powerful as they are, you see, they're not eternal, they're only immortal. That's quite literally the Sanskrita that is used. They're not nitya, eternal, they're amrita, they are immortal. There's a difference. What is meant by immortal? It means that they live for so long a time that in comparison to humans, we might as well call them immortal. They can live for 10 million years, 100 million years, indeed in some cases billions of years. But we also understand that all these beings are servants of the one supreme, of what in, let's say Neoplatonism, for example, or Platonism itself would be called the one. And that is the absolute. So this verse is confirming this. So what is this God, this Brahman who is self-luminous? He is the inner light even for the gods. So it's interesting. What is the Sanskrita? Deva, Devi. Deva means God, Devi means goddess. What does that word mean? Does anyone know, please?
Being of light.
A being of light. But that light is given to them by the absolute. That's what this verse, what this sentence is saying. But now continuing to speak about God, about the absolute, more qualifiers. Who is the Purohit? Purohit is a very specific word that you rarely hear today. It's from truly the earlier layers of Vedic Sanskrit, not classical, but older than classical. And it means someone who is the leader of rituals, not just a priest, but he is the chief priest who, when a ritual is going on, he directs everyone. He directs the Ritviks, he directs all the other individual priests. So it's saying, it's interesting, it's comparing God to this, who is the leader of the rituals of the gods. So we've talked about this briefly in the course of looking at the Purusha Sukta. The rituals that humans can do, if they were only pure enough still, can make a barren desert green. That's how powerful our ancient rituals are. Can you imagine the rituals of the gods and how powerful those are? They can quite literally create planets through their rituals. It's truly astounding. So what this is saying very specifically is that it is God who is the leader of such rituals. So does it mean this in the literal sense? In some cases. But more than this, it is trying to explain, if anything, again, the ontological, hierarchical stature of God. That's what this is trying to explain by this very interesting little clause that, again, a lot of people would not understand. And then finally, and who was in existence even before the gods. Now, this part, again, is very important, and it conjoins with what was said earlier about the absolute being the inner light, even for the gods. And that is that, indeed, the gods, and this is true in every quote-unquote pantheon throughout all of Indo-European religion, the gods come into being, they're here for a long time, they eventually go out of being. Well, that's understood in Sanatana Dharma more than anywhere, that they serve their function. These are beneficent beings who they are in charge of something specific. But before even the gods existed, there was God. That's what is being said here, and who was in existence even before the gods. So thus, the absolute, God himself, is of a nature of eternality, the likes of which goes beyond our comprehension, even mathematically. I've talked about this many times, how it's interesting. Sanatana Dharma teaches this, Platonism teaches this, modern physics now teaches this as well, that when you talk about the infinite, there are multiple infinites, actually, and some qualitatively superior to others. God is that being who is infinite beyond all infinities. So, we're going to look at one more verse, and then we'll end there for today. And again, this continues in a Vedantic theme. And this is verse 23. In the beginning of creation, the gods, manifesting the light of Brahman, addressed Brahman thus. For that Brahmana, that is a wise priestly sage, who realizes you thus, all the gods come under his control. What an amazing, powerful statement. This is truly an amazing statement. Let's just go through this. We don't need to take a lot of time, but we will indeed go through this a little bit. So in the beginning of creation, now what are we talking about? What the entire Purusha Sukta is focusing on, again, cosmogony. This is not a term, sadly, that many people are conversant with anymore. They are now, for the last many, many weeks, several months that we've been doing this. So in other words, at the very beginning of what? Creation. So we're talking about a long time ago. The gods, these divine beings, these beneficent, wonderful beings, and doing what? Manifesting the light of Brahman. You see, this is a continuance of what was said in the previous verse, that even the light of the gods is a manifestation of the light of God. So they addressed God, they addressed Brahman in this way. And it gets a little bit confusing only because of the correlation of these two really dissimilar words, Brahman versus Brahmana. And I've talked about this. You know, people get them confused all the time. People get three Sanskrit words confused. Brahman, Brahma, long A on the end, and Brahmana. The reason why they sound so similar is because they have the same verb root, but they are completely different things. Brahman is God. Brahma is the creator of a specific universe who is a limited being. And a Brahmana. A Brahmana is an individual who is a priest, someone who is a sage, a wise person, etc. So all that being said, in the beginning, the gods, and doing what? Manifesting the light of God, address God in this way. So they're literally saying this to God. For that Brahmana, that is, for that wise priestly sage, who realizes you thus. What is meant by thus? Who realizes you in the way that has been spoken of in all these verses, 23 verses now so far. That Brahmana who realizes you in this way that we've just been talking about, for that person, all the gods will come under his control. Now, what is meant by that? That's an odd thing to say. And when we think about that, it sounds somewhat odd. Well, let me explain what is meant by this. That individual who truly has God consciousness, that is, who has direct, non-mediated perception of the Absolute, who quite literally is communing with God, both in his perfection as a limited being, but then communing with God, that which is the perfect. Once this happens, then that is considered to be the highest of beings within the universe. Higher than even the gods, higher than kings, higher than anyone. So in other words, who is the most important? Let me state it in this way. so people get this. Who is the most important? Who is the most qualified? Who is the wisest? Who is the most perfected of all beings? Is it a god? Is it a goddess? Is it the richest man on earth? Is it the most powerful man on earth? Is it the emperor of quite literally an empire? And you can go on and on. What this verse is saying is that it's none of the above. It is that individual who has personally realized and experienced and is devoted to God. That's the highest of persons. So thus, wherever we find ourselves traversing this material world, whether we're in this body right now that we are in, all the bodies we've had previously, the bodies that we may or may not have in the future, wherever we find ourselves, if you have the choice to seek out one person for counsel, one individual, again, don't seek the rich person, don't seek a king, don't seek anyone except for this person, that person who has realized God within perfectly. That's who you seek. Because, not only does that person have the ability to reveal God unto you, he can reveal everything unto you, including yourself. And thus we end here on verse 23. And again, we will go on to the last verse next week. We actually did it. We went through 3 verses. You can applaud. We managed to finish 3 whole verses. And for people who don't know what we're joking about, there have been many times we will spend an hour doing 1 verse. But I chose to go a little bit quickly with these verses. Next week, which will be the 12th session of our Purusha Sukta series, we will finish the last verse, the most important of them. Very good. So with that, we've ended before the hour, at least according to this clock. So indeed, I would like to take some questions. So if there are any questions that anyone might have, either here in our temple or our international audience, and indeed, just to remind people, we have an audience, the International Sanatana Dharma Society, we have followers in about 70 nations. Our audience consists of about 140 nations throughout the world. Last time I checked, at least. It goes back and forth between, let's say, 135 to 145, something like that. So indeed, if anyone has any questions, Ananta Shesha, you had a question. Oh, and if I can say, just speak nice and loud so the microphone can pick you up.
In the context of the Purusha Sukta and delineating the structure of the Prajapati and cosmogony, is there any relation to the word in this context, Sukta and Shukra in Sanskrit?
Good question, but there is not. No, there's no correlation. They come from 2 completely different verb roots. So there's no correlation whatsoever. Sukta is a type of hymn. That's what that means. There are sutras, there are suktas, there are stotras. These are all different kinds of hymns and meters, very specifically. More than anything, not just type of hymn, it's meter. That's what determines what a specific passage in the Vedic scriptures will be. So, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, you have what's called Anushtubh meter, Anushtubh shloka. So that's what this is referring to. Yeah, but good question, though. Very good. Any other questions here before I take questions online? Please.
I'm going to try and phrase this. When you were talking about us being encouraged to become more like the wise ones, the person's name I've forgotten.
Marichi.
Yes, thank you. Is that as a step towards liberation?
The entire process is, yes. So in other words, the very process of trying to become like the wise ones of the past, that's going toward liberation. And to the point where, the idea, of course, is to achieve liberation. So indeed, to replicate the inner state of such beings in ourselves. Because truthfully, that's one way in which we can describe what it means to make spiritual progress. What does it mean to make spiritual progress? Well, you find an individual, in fact, for that matter, let me back up. This is what it means to make any progress toward a goal is, let's say, generally speaking, you have a mentor. Let's say you're taking your very, very first martial arts class. Literally, you've never taken one class in your life, but this is a school where this person who is the head of the school, who's the teacher, they have 5 black belts. You're not there yet. It's going to take you a long time to get there, but now you have this individual as your goal. This is your exemplar, this is your teacher, your goal is to eventually achieve that. And of course, 100 other examples can be given of something where you have a mentor. I want to become like that person. Well, this is true spiritually even more so than anything else. This is the concept of a guru. That indeed, if we wish to become X thing, we have to find someone who models X thing perfectly, study under that person, observe that person, be like unto that person. So that's the idea. This is how we make spiritual progress. And yes, to the point of liberation, to the point where, in the same way that, we're not talking about just, when it talks about the wise ones, we're not talking about, of course, just fellow travelers along the path to truth. No, we're talking about people who achieve the truth. And without doubt whatsoever. When you find such individuals, you try to become like unto those people as much as possible. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Maybe again, before we go to the online questions, are there any other questions here that anyone might have? No? We're good? All right. Let me look then at a few of these online questions, and it looks like we have quite a few. So please give me a moment to go back a little bit because, we have a lot of questions. 279,000. No, not that many, but it seems like it. Very good. All right, I think I'm at the top. Actually, no, there are more questions even than I thought. Give me a moment, please. I'm scrolling up toward the top so I can see the questions in order. Very good. This is easily answered. Yes. This question is, actually, did he ask a question before this? Because he says also. So let me just check. All right, I don't see anything, but he starts with also. In any case, also I have the Purusha Sukta in Sanskrit from Rig Veda and 3 English translations, and they all have 16 verses. Where might I find the full 24 verses? I know you said that in other scriptures the Purusha Sukta is composed with less than 24. I did indeed mention that, verses, but not in the actual Rig Veda. I'm confused about it not being 24 in the unabridged Rig Veda. Indeed, I did explain this before, but I'll explain it again. People get confused about this. Some people think there are 16, some people think there are 24 verses. There are 24 verses. The first 16 are in the Rig Veda. The other verses are in other Vedas. So the other Vedas. You don't find them all in Rig Veda. And it doesn't matter because at one time all 4 Vedas were considered one Veda. It was Veda Vyasa himself who divided them into 4 Vedas. So that's why you see that Rig Veda has 16, the other Vedas have the rest. So that's the traditional explanation of this. So indeed, to find all 24 verses, just look around. I mean, what can I say? I have to say, sadly, do a Google search. You'll find the full thing. But there are 24 accepted verses in the Purusha Sukta. Very good. So I hope that answers that question. Just a technical question. Nice question. Namaste, Shri Acharya Ji. I want to take refuge in God by surrendering myself. Is this a good way? This is the way. Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharadam vraja aham tvam sarva bhabebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. So this is what Krishna himself explains in chapter 18, verse 66 of Bhagavad Gita, that this is the highest of all paths. There are many, many side paths, smaller paths, paths that lead to the main path. But how is it that we ultimately know that which is the ultimate, that which is the absolute? We surrender our existence unto that absolute. Thus, in that motion of surrender, doing the very opposite of what has kept us bound. What has kept us bound in ignorance? Ego. False ego. I'm the center, I'm the center, I'm the center of everything. Well, how do we relieve ourselves of this burden of egotism? The opposite motion. Not me, but you. I surrender my life at the feet of God. And this is how we do it. This is the path. This is Sanatana Dharma. So thank you for asking that. Oh. Good. Very nice. Here is a nice, interesting, very practical question, which I will absolutely answer. And it is, Namaste Sri Acharyaji, how does one deal with cognitive dissonance whereby one loves Krishna and Sanatana Dharma, but also still feels as if it is somewhat alien to our own heritage? Sorry in advance, you don't have to apologize. I get this question all the time, actually. Yeah, and of course I know who you are, I know who you are, where you are, etc., and you're very, very much a Westerner. Yes, indeed. This is a problem that still some individuals have, that I have personally addressed again and again and again ad nauseum. And it is nauseating. It's sad. It's an unfortunate thing. I've had to answer this question myself for 52 years, and that is that many people have this idea that Sanatana Dharma is an alien, foreign, Indian religion, etc., an Eastern religion, and we're Westerners. How are we to follow this? Well, as I've answered this again for 52 years, for those of us who are Westerners, because not everyone is, we have a lot of Indians who are watching as well. Nepal, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan. We have followers in all these nations and more. But for those of us who are Westerners, so for our Indian Hindus, please excuse us for a moment, we have to address this. For those of us who are Westerners, indeed, we are not practicing an Indian religion. We are practicing what? What is the name? Sanatana Dharma, the eternal natural way. Listening to that profoundly philosophical terminology, does this apply to only one nation? Oh, yes, let's pick any nation. Oh, Bahrain, Azerbaijan is the only nation where they somehow have the eternal natural way. That's kind of akin to saying that, oh yes, only one nation possesses mathematics, and it doesn't apply to anyone else. 1 + 1 = 2 is trademarked in Kazakhstan. No one else can use that. No, of course not. We're talking about something that is the eternal natural way. This being the case, of course, this applies to all individuals who are noble, who are wise, who are indeed intelligent enough, sincere enough, honest enough to want to know that truth. If that fits you, that truth is for you, regardless of anything. So, indeed, this is the first thing to be understood, is what is the very nature of this path. It's not something sectarian. It is akin to mathematics. It is akin to logic. It's universal. It's for all beings who are capable of mathematics, capable of logic. If you're capable of those things, they belong to you. That's the first thing to be said. The second thing to be said is what I've spoken about, written about, again, for decades and decades now, and that is that Sanatana Dharma, if you go back far enough, was at one time the worldview. Can't even call it a religion, because then what comes into mind are sects, beliefs, theologies, etc., all fighting with each other. No. This was the worldview of humanity at one time, stretching from Ireland to the Philippines, stretching from Gibraltar to Siberia, and everything in between, if you go back far enough. So thus, as an individual who myself as a Westerner, very much a Westerner, very proud to be a Westerner. I'm half Italian, half Spanish, purely Mediterranean. I can tell you that in practicing Sanatana Dharma, I know that I am practicing the religion of my most ancient of ancestors going back 5,000 years. So we need to remind ourselves of this again and again, because indeed, for a lot of Westerners, it's still something quote unquote somewhat new, which is, kind of interesting. It's kind of a preposterous thing that it's our most ancient heritage, and yet because it was stolen from us for so long, we think it's new. A lot of concepts that were stolen from us might seem new to us today, not just spirituality, but politics, history, all sorts of interesting things. But no, we need to continue to remind ourselves of this. But more importantly of all, and this is the last thing I'll say in addressing this very good question, history, philosophy, cultures, yeah, it's all fascinating. It's all fascinating. More than anything, what is it that should be driving us as spiritual people? Just, oh, it's so interesting. Oh, yes, let me read some ancient texts and compare and contrast and blah, blah, blah. And, oh, that's quite curious. In other words, taking a purely academic approach. Is this what we're meant to do? No. Why is it that we should be practicing Sanatana Dharma? The reason why is because it is truth. And because it gives our lives more than just meaning. It gives our lives nectar. It gives our lives nectar, sweetness. That's why we follow. So I hope that answers the question. So very quickly, so you said, oh yes, you love Krishna and you love Sanatana Dharma. Focus on that as much as possible. Very good. All right, let me look at just a few more of these questions that are here. And we won't go on too much longer. As is always the case, I will not be able to answer every single question. Otherwise, we'll be here for another hour. So I might just take one or two at the very most. So just give me a moment to see what these other questions are. Oh, very nice. This is not a question. It's a very beautiful statement. And I've been mostly skipping the statements just because of time. But again, this is a beautiful one. Please accept my most sincere obeisances and thanks, Sri Dharma Pravartaka Acharya. May your eternal light of hope stay emanating in this world for us to follow. Thank you very much for saying that. I truly appreciate it very much. And there are similar statements, but again, I want to answer one or two more questions with the little bit of time we have. Again, nice statements, wonderful, wonderful statements. Again, a lot of thanks. Thank you for your seva, Sri Acharya Ji. Sorry, give me 1 second, it shifted. And for discussing this section of Rig Veda, which is one of the most profound and beautiful scriptures ever. Indeed it is. Someone is asking, is it possible to get a link to the Discord again? So I assume that was already put up there. So yeah, please just search in the chat and you'll find that. Very good. Let me just answer this as briefly as I can. Can you please explain Vishishta Advaita, and is it acceptable to understand this as panentheism? Yes and yes. I've spoken about specifically the philosophy of Vishishta Advaita many times on previous videos. Indeed, that is the philosophical system that I follow and teach. Again, the only reason why I'm chuckling a little bit is you're asking me to explain something that really would take about 2 hours. So look at previous videos, please, and you'll see where I do indeed explain the various aspects of this philosophical system known as Vishishta Advaita, or qualified non-dualism. And then, indeed, it is acceptable to understand this as panentheism. If you understand what that term actually means, it fits Vishishta Advaita, and it's a description of Vishishta Advaita that fits perfectly, panentheism. So, indeed, it is correct. And let me see if I can maybe answer one more very quick question. Very good. There. Please forgive me. I'm looking for a question that I can answer somewhat quickly. I saw a very good question here, but it would take me about 15 minutes to answer it. This is the last question that I will take, and it is a very nice and a very practical question, and I think this is a very good place to end on. And it's very simply, is it natural that the more we open our hearts in service to Krishna, the more we feel a responsibility to help our fellow Atman? Very, very good question. And the answer is yes. The answer is absolutely that is the case. The more we open our hearts to God, the more we want to help our fellow souls in every way. So indeed, that's the case. This is why, indeed, who is truly the most compassionate person, who is the person who is most service-oriented, that individual who truly wants to help and is a benefactor to all living beings around them, it is the individual who is surrendered to God. It is the individual who is a liberated sage. And why is this the case? Because their motivation is purest. They want to help fellow beings because they understand that all beings have the same origin. So thus they understand truly that when I look upon another, I'm not looking upon a stranger. I'm looking at spiritually what is my brother, what is my sister. That being the case, indeed, once we know God, we know everything, and we want to help everyone. So this is why, indeed, the greatest benefactor of humanity is someone like a Buddha, someone like a Rishi, someone who has achieved liberation and wants to help others also to achieve liberation. So indeed, that is the case. But with that, again, there are many more questions here, but we've already gone about 20 minutes past the hour. We will end here for now. And again, I thank you all for being here. We have a very nice full temple. Several of our people could not make it for various reasons, but we have a nice full temple here of individuals. And thank you to our international audience of people watching from quite literally all throughout the world. And again, we will have our final session on the Purusha Sukta next time that we get together, i.e. next Sunday at 2 p.m. Please join us then. And in the meantime, again, someone mentioned our Discord server. Very quickly, if you would like to engage in more discussion along these lines, that is, to learn more and more about the Vedic way, Sanatana Dharma, please join our Discord server. And indeed, the link should be there in the chat. Just follow that link, and we have a Discord server of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of devotees, truly from throughout the world. There's discussion that takes place 24/7, all around the clock. And indeed, if you even just need inspiration, if you just need to make friends with other people who are spiritual, join our Discord server. And then finally, please visit our website, dharmacentral.com. And there you'll find many of our books that are available. You'll find more information about Sanatana Dharma, how to donate to our religious nonprofit movement. You will find articles, you'll find all sorts of information if you go to dharmacentral.com. And finally, the last thing I'm going to say is please help us with our channel by subscribing to this channel, which, as you've seen, is unlike any other channel on YouTube or anywhere really in existence. Please like this as well. It helps with the algorithm so that this will be suggested to others. And I ask you all, between now and the next time that we get together, to all please take very good care of yourselves. Namaste, everyone together. Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Sriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
May Dharma be victorious in our world. Evam Bhavatu. May it be so. And for all sentient beings who are with us right now, let me assure you, as sure as it is that the sun will rise tomorrow, Dharma will be victorious. And I leave you, as always, with these words from Bhagavan Sri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66, wherein he says, Ma Shuchaha. Do not fear. Thank you for being with us.